So let me talk about how this program came about in the first place. So this wasn't something that as an adult I thought, you know what, it'd be great, let's come up with a new approach to music learning. It had nothing to do with that sort of thinking. That this method is the codification of the way that music occurred for me as a very young child. I was about 3 or 4 when I first became aware of the fact that I hear music, and hearing one note to the next, I could see it drawing shapes. I could just see it in my mind's eye. And I really didn't think anything of it. It was just the way that music occurred for me. And in my family, I'm the youngest of 5. I have an older sister and 3 older brothers. And we all began, well, at least the boys, my sister chose to do something else, but all the boys, we began our piano lessons when we turned 7. So I actually was born into a household where there was music lessons and practice and playing happening every day. And then by the time I began studying piano at 7, my teacher would play the songs that I was to be learning, and those shapes that I could picture in my mind's eye, I could actually see them on the instrument. And I actually thought I was doing something wrong because I was supposed to be learning how to read, which I never was. I didn't need to. My teacher would play the songs, I could picture these shapes, I could remember the sound of the piece, and during the week I would just figure the whole thing out based on shapes and patterns. And then come my lesson on Saturday, I'd be terrified that I was going to be found out because I'd been cheating. And so I'd sit at the piano with my teacher behind me just sitting there, and I'd blankly stare at the page pretending to read. Couldn't read a note. I thought I was fooling him, which I know now that I wasn't. He'd go to my mother and say, Neil's not reading. You know, he's pretending to read. He thinks he's fooling me. But I'm so thankful that my mother said, yeah, but listen to him play. Just let him do his own thing. So unlike my older brothers who all learned how to read, I didn't learn how to read. I just did everything based on shapes and patterns. And still thought I needed to keep it hidden because I thought I was doing the wrong thing, I didn't learn that there was such a thing as a scale until I was 19. I didn't learn how to read music until I was 35. And yet I had this comprehensive foundation of musicianship, all based on this way of learning. As an adult, in my mid-30s, I returned to more formal studies to sort of get into what I thought was real music, what I should have been doing when I was a child. And I began teaching music to students as well as coaching other teachers in my mid-30s. Teaching a traditional reading-based approach that took a different approach to music reading. It was very effective, but reading-based nonetheless. And I got a call from a government agency one day, and they said, do you think that you could teach this young 8-year-old boy to play? This boy was without sight, he was blind. I jumped at the opportunity. I had no idea how I was going to teach him. And it occurred to me, well, I mean, given what I knew then, I just thought being without sight, he wouldn't be able to read traditionally the way that I knew to teach. What was I going to do? And that's really the first time that it occurred to me that, well, hang on, I didn't read at all when I was young. What the heck was I doing? And that was actually the very first time that I began to reconstruct and look at it consciously. Actually begin to look at it and describe to myself, bring language to what it was that I was doing. And I started to say, oh, I see, I'm seeing shapes and patterns. And so with this young 8-year-old boy, his name was Wade, I took some pieces and broke them into these shapes and patterns, and I knew that he'd be able to feel them in his hands, and I thought it was worth a shot. And it was more than being worth a shot. He began to play great sounding music immediately. And I thought, well, being without sight, his ears were compensating. He had a really good ear for music, and that's why he was doing so well. But I found out about 3 months into lessons, Wade was playing a whole repertoire of music. I asked his dad one day whether they were happy with Wade's progress, and his father said, look, we're not only happy with it, but he's started to teach his 4-year-old sister how to play this way, and she's blind too. That was just a life-changing experience for me. I still didn't fully realize what I had, but I just knew it was that visceral moment of, oh wow, what would happen if I started to teach all young children this way? And even then I just thought of it as maybe as a precursor to doing real music, which was learning how to read and play. I thought maybe it was like music preschool before they got into, real music school, which was sort of still traditional teaching. So I began sharing these concepts with other children, and it was astounding to me what I saw. I just saw the speed and the ease with which students were playing sophisticated music. Students that only had a month or two of lessons were playing more sophisticated music than students that had had a year or two of lessons. Students within 10 or 12 weeks had a repertoire of 10, 12, 15 songs. I mean, it was really amazing. And at the time I thought, well, maybe this is happening because this approach is so organic to me. I wonder what would happen if I shared these concepts with other teachers. Could they replicate it? Would there be any value? So I started sharing it with other teachers, and they were shocking to get the feedback of teachers coming back saying, we haven't seen anything like this. I mean, our parents have been forcing their kids, struggling to get their kids to practice, and now they're struggling to get them away from the piano, you know, trying to get them into bed, because they're playing so much, they're playing so quickly and naturally and easily, and that relationship that they have with the instrument is so physical rather than being so sort of heady and in the traditional approach to get students to play. And that was when I thought, wow, I've really got something here that warrants exploring. And so I went in, for years, I went into this sort of, I call it like a laboratory relationship with my teaching and my discovering the methodology. Could I take this approach, and how far could I take it before a student had to learn how to read and more about the math and the theory of music? Would this approach apply to different genres? Classical, contemporary, jazz, blues, you know, contemporary music. And that was the quest. And from those beginnings, what emerged out of it was an entire educational methodology as well as an educational philosophy. And here we are a couple of decades later as the world leader in the field of playing-based education, and this vast global community of educators that share this vision of, hey, this is a program more so than ever before in this day and age of constant change, that we've got an opportunity to bring an entirely new level of self-expression to the world. We've got an opportunity here to bring music education into the hearts and the hands of people all over the planet in an entirely new way. It's an absolute privilege, and it's a really extraordinary thing to be a part of. I'm completely honoured, actually.